Emma had always believed that love was a kind of certainty, a steady current that would carry her through life. She had grown up watching her parents laugh, argue, and make up in a rhythm that felt eternal. When she met Alex, she thought she had found the same kind of unwavering bond. He was charming, attentive, and the kind of person who could make her laugh until her stomach hurt. For a while, life felt like it had finally aligned with the dreams she had whispered to herself late at night. But life, Emma was learning, had a different sense of timing. After 2 years together, Alex began changing. The phone calls became less frequent, the smiles a little forced. Emma convinced herself it was stress, work, or something temporary. She ignored the whispers of doubt in her mind, telling herself that love required patience. One rainy evening, when Emma had prepared his favorite dinner and lit the candles just as he liked, Alex told her he needed space. He wasn't happy. He didn't know if he could continue. He left, leaving the apartment smelling of candle wax and disappointment. The next few weeks were a blur. Emma wandered through her days with a hollow ache in her chest, feeling as though she had lost not just a lover but a piece of herself. Friends tried to reach out, inviting her for coffee or movie nights, but she declined. She felt unmoored, like a boat adrift on a sea that didn't belong to her. Her work suffered, her appetite vanished, and even the simplest tasks felt monumental. Then, one evening, Emma noticed a small poster taped to the community bulletin board in her neighborhood: "Volunteers needed, helping at the downtown shelter." She paused. The words struck her with an unexpected clarity. She didn't know what compelled her more, the idea of helping others, or the thought that maybe, in helping someone else, she could help herself. Without overthinking, she signed up. The first day at the shelter was humbling. The building smelled of antiseptic and overcooked soup. Children ran around with mismatched socks, laughing loudly, while older people shuffled in to pick up warm meals. Emma was assigned to help a young boy, about 7 or 8, who had been in foster care for most of his life. His name was Lucas. He had deep brown eyes that seemed far older than his age, and he clung to the edges of everything, as if the world had been unkind enough that he couldn't trust it fully. "Hi," she said softly, kneeling to his level. "I'm Emma. Want to help me with these puzzles?" Lucas stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. They worked together, connecting shapes and colors, and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt a small spark of something warm in her chest. The boy's laughter was cautious, but it was genuine, and it reminded her that joy could exist even after pain. Days turned into weeks, and Emma found herself looking forward to her shifts at the shelter. She helped organize food drives, tutored kids in reading, and stayed late to clean up after dinner. She began to notice the quiet gratitude in the eyes of the people she helped, the small gestures of kindness that built connections stronger than she had realized. One elderly man, Mr. Jenkins, would always save her a slice of apple pie. He didn't speak much, but his smile was enough to make her feel seen. Through these acts of service, Emma started to confront her own heartache. She realized that Alex's departure didn't define her worth or her capacity to love. Each day at the shelter reminded her that the world was bigger than her pain, and kindness, simple, human kindness, was a path to healing. One chilly afternoon, as she was distributing blankets to a family that had recently lost their home in a fire, Emma overheard a conversation between 2 volunteers about a community project, a garden where people could grow vegetables and flowers together, open to anyone who needed a fresh start. Emma felt a flicker of hope ignite. She thought about the way the children had smiled at her, about the warmth she had felt in helping them, and she decided she would volunteer for the garden project as well. It was a small step, but it was hers, a reclamation of her own life. The garden became Emma's sanctuary. Each morning she arrived before the sun had fully risen, kneeling in the soil, planting seeds with care. With every seed that sprouted, she felt a small piece of her heart mend. She befriended other volunteers who had experienced loss or disappointment, sharing stories and laughter while digging, watering, and tending to the green shoots. She began to understand that new beginnings weren't just about finding love again, they were about learning to nurture it, within oneself and in the lives of others. One evening, as she watered the rows of young vegetables, Lucas ran up to her, holding a tiny, wilted flower he had rescued from the compost heap. "Look," he said, his eyes shining, "it's still alive." Emma knelt beside him, smiling. "It's beautiful, just like you." And in that moment, she realized that broken hearts could still give birth to new beginnings. She didn't know what the future held, but she understood something vital: healing didn't require forgetting the past. It required embracing the present, allowing kindness to guide the way. Part 2. Winter melted into spring, and the garden flourished. Emma found herself waking with purpose, carrying with her the sense of responsibility and hope she had once thought lost. The work wasn't glamorous, it involved early mornings, aching muscles, and often dealing with stubborn weeds or disappointing weather. But Emma discovered that the satisfaction of watching life grow, fragile yet persistent, was a kind of quiet magic. Lucas became her steadfast companion. He had grown more confident, sharing his thoughts about school, friends, and even the small triumphs of everyday life. Emma noticed that he had a knack for storytelling, weaving imaginary worlds out of cardboard boxes and scraps of fabric. She encouraged him, reading his stories aloud to the other children at the shelter, celebrating each imaginative leap he took. And as she nurtured his creativity, she noticed something remarkable: the pain in her own chest had begun to soften. One afternoon, a new volunteer joined the garden project. His name was Daniel, a soft-spoken man with a gentle sense of humor and a quiet intensity in his eyes. He had moved to the city recently, leaving behind a career that had left him unfulfilled and a relationship that had ended abruptly. Emma recognized the same weariness in him that she had once felt in herself. They began to work together, planting seeds and sharing stories about the people who had shaped their lives. Slowly, their conversations deepened, forming a tentative trust that neither of them had anticipated. Daniel was not a replacement for Alex, he was not meant to fill the gaps of her past. He was a companion on the journey, someone who understood that healing was an ongoing process, and that love could be gentle, patient, and quietly transformative. Through laughter and shared labor in the garden, Emma realized that the heart could expand, accommodating new connections without erasing the old ones. Spring turned to summer, and the garden became more than just a project, it became a community. Families who had once struggled to find stability came to harvest vegetables, share meals, and celebrate small victories. Emma watched Lucas beam as he handed a basket of tomatoes to an elderly neighbor, and she felt a surge of pride and gratitude. She thought about the fragility of life, about how easily joy could be overlooked, and she vowed to never take these moments for granted again. One evening, after a long day of planting sunflowers along the perimeter of the garden, Emma sat on a wooden bench, wiping the sweat from her brow. Daniel joined her, handing her a bottle of water, and for a while, they simply sat in silence, listening to the soft rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children. "Life has a strange way of teaching us lessons," Daniel said finally. "Sometimes it's through heartbreak, sometimes through unexpected kindness. But it always teaches us to keep moving forward." Emma nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle into her chest. "I used to think I'd never heal," she admitted. "But helping others, it's shown me that there's a whole world beyond my pain. And that maybe, one day, love can be gentle again." Daniel smiled. "It can. And it will, in its own way." That night, as Emma returned to her small apartment, she reflected on how far she had come. The shadows of heartbreak still lingered, but they were softer now, more like echoes than sharp pangs. She had discovered resilience, the quiet strength that comes from choosing to care for others even when your own heart feels fragile. And in nurturing those around her, she had learned to nurture herself. Weeks later, the garden hosted a small festival to celebrate the harvest. Neighbors, volunteers, and shelter families gathered to share food, music, and stories. Emma watched Lucas perform a small skit he had written about a lonely seed that found a home, and she laughed through tears. Daniel stood beside her, holding her hand gently, and for the first time in a long while, she felt complete, not because her heart was no longer broken, but because she had learned the beauty of rebuilding it with patience, love, and kindness. As the sun set over the garden, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Emma understood that life was not about avoiding heartbreak, it was about embracing the new beginnings that could bloom from it. Every smile she received, every hand she held, every seed she planted was a testament to the enduring power of human kindness. And in that understanding, she finally felt the peace she had been searching for, the sense that even after loss, life could be beautiful again. Emma's journey taught her something essential: healing is not linear, and love is not a finite resource. There are countless ways to rebuild, countless moments of grace and connection waiting to be discovered. And sometimes, the most profound love we experience is the love we cultivate in the hearts of others, and in our own.